Hey everyone, welcome. Today we're going to be doing a Q&A video using questions that were sent in to me by you guys. So thank you so much to everyone who sent questions in, and we will get straight into it after my sip of tea. All right, so the first question is, where do you get your inspiration? For me, I think my inspiration changes pretty frequently. I go through phases where I want to paint lots of architecture, and then I'll go through a phase where I want to paint super kind of spooky landscapes, and I may even go through a phase where I want to paint people or portraits or animal portraits. So it changes pretty frequently, but I'm a huge movie and show lover. I love film, so I do find that a lot of times whatever I'm watching at the moment kind of will inspire my work. For instance, if I am watching Game of Thrones, I might want to paint a lot of like mountainscapes. And at the moment, I'm reading the ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses books, and I would love to do something ACOTAR themed. But yeah, I definitely think it is based upon what I'm watching, what I'm reading. Yeah, I think that has a huge influence over what inspires me. All right, so the next question is, how do you find your references? And this is a super, super important question that I would love to talk about. And first of all, if your goal is realism, you should always be using a reference. There's no reason not to. It's going to improve your work so much. I think there's this huge kind of misunderstanding that your work has to be from the imagination. But even if you want to do something from the imagination, you can edit together a reference, and I highly recommend that. Like I said, if your goal is realism, it's just going to help you improve your work so much. As far as where I find my references, this will change, and sometimes I'll use photos that I've taken myself. A lot of times if I travel or I go on trips, I try to bring my nice camera so that I can take lots of potential reference photos. And then sometimes if I'm working on a commission or something like that, references are provided to me by the client. A lot of times I'll use copyright-free photos, and that's really important. You can't just go on the internet and find any photo off of Google and use that as a reference, because that's copyright infringement. So be sure if you're using a photo that you find online that it is copyright-free. Also, sometimes if I ever find a photo that I absolutely love and it's perfect and exactly what I want, but it's not copyright free, I have like hunted down the photographer before and I'll get written permission from the photographer. And the few times that I've done this, the photographers have been so kind and like super happy to let me use their photos as reference, but you just want to make sure that you have written permission from the photographer. And then lastly, if I can't find anything, I will edit together a photo. I've done this lots of times too, kind of stitch lots of photos together and kind of create something original. Our next question is, how long does the average painting take from start to finish? And this is something that is going to vary a ton. And that's kind of based off of the size of the painting, the reference that I'm using, how much detail does it have architecture? I find that architecture takes me quite a bit longer just because, you know, all the lines have to be straight. Everything kind of has to be much more perfect than a more organic landscape. But I thought I could just pull up some of my paintings here and kind of tell you how long each of these took. So my painting, A Road to Enchantment, that one took me about 3 days, if I remember right. A Crimson Tempest took me about 3 weeks. My Nepal painting took me about 6 weeks. 001, or my Stranger Things house painting, took me about 3 months. And then I think the longest I've ever spent on a painting was Young Again, which is a painting of the Venice canals, and that one took me 3.5 months. Fun stuff. Next question is, if you were not a painter, what would you do? And fun fact about me, when I was a kid growing up, I used to want to be a sign flipper on the side of the road. And that is no longer my dream job. And I did think long and hard about this. what I would do if I was not a painter, and I cannot imagine myself doing anything else other than painting. But some of you may know this about me. I play piano, and I started playing piano when I was 6, so I grew up playing piano. And my whole life growing up, I always thought I would do something music related. Specifically, I wanted to compose film scores. Like I said, I love movies, I love film. And like most of what I listen to is film scores. And I just kind of got to the point where I was doing written exams, competitions, recitals, all of that. And I just realized that I enjoy playing piano more for myself than for other people. But yeah, maybe possibly something music related. That's what I would choose. Next up is, what is the best way to sell art? Is it through Etsy and platforms like that, or a personal website? So when I first got started drawing, because I actually drew for a very long time before I painted, I feel like painting is a bit more of a recent thing for me. I would sell a lot of work and do commissions for friends and family. And I think that is a super great way to get started, kind of to get a taste of what it's like to take on commissions. And I just kind of slowly branched out from there. And I can't remember the exact year that I got on Etsy, but I did have an Etsy shop for a very, very long time. And I do believe that back when I was on Etsy, they took kind of a relatively small percentage of each sale compared to what they take now. I think it's much, much larger now. But Etsy was great. I had no problems with Etsy. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I switched over to using a personal website, which I think would probably be the end goal. It's just a lot more professional looking. You're gonna have less of a chunk taken from each sale than a platform like Etsy. But I was actually surprised to find that my personal website is a lot less customizable, specifically with shipping and things like that, than Etsy was. Etsy let me customize more, which I really liked. But yeah, I would say kind of the end goal should be kind of to have your own personal website, but that's just me. And Etsy was good for me while I had Etsy, so whatever works best for you. All right, I've lost count of what question we're on, but next question, what is your top tip in achieving realism? This is a very good question, and I think the best thing that I can tell you if you're looking to achieve realism is paint what you see in your reference and not what you know. I think a lot of times we have a tendency to maybe get confused with a reference and try to like fill in gaps what we think should be in certain spots, when in actuality it's just better to paint it how we see it. Specifically with faces. I don't do a lot of portraits, but I think we're so accustomed to looking at faces and understanding the structure of faces that when we see a reference where a face kind of is lit very oddly, has weird lighting or weird structure, I think we kind of want to change that and paint it how our mind thinks it should be, when in actuality, it's really just better to paint it how you see it in the reference again. And that is for if you are going for realism. Next question is, do you struggle parting with paintings? This is a very good question. And actually, most of the time I would say no. Most of the time I don't struggle parting with a painting. Sometimes it's a little bit harder than other times because I think just naturally, I think I'm more attached to certain pieces than others. But most of the time I'm just so happy if something sells. I'm very happy to send it away to someone who's going to like cherish it and love it. My one piece of advice is take as many photos as you possibly can, because I've had times in the past where I've taken print photos of a painting, I've taken photos of the painting, but if you follow me, you probably know that I like to take pictures of me and the painting, and I have shipped off pieces in the past where I have photos of the painting, but I realized I don't have one with me and the painting. So yeah, just make sure you take all your photos before it's gone off to its new home. But yeah, most of the time I don't have trouble parting with paintings. Okay, Next question is, because you don't use thinners or solvents other than in the underpainting, what mediums do you use? And this is very true. I think people tend to think that oil painting is super, super like thinner and solvent heavy when it doesn't have to be. So I have like a underpainting that's like barely peeking through on the side right here, but I use mineral spirits when I do these underpaintings. But other than that, I don't paint with thinners. I don't paint with mineral spirits or solvents, and I don't even clean with them. So yeah, oil painting doesn't have to be super toxic and solvent heavy. So when I'm actually painting, the only medium that I use is just a touch of linseed oil when needed. I used to use liquid for a minute, and I've kind of switched over to using linseed oil. I just felt like liquid kind of like got gross after a while. And I will say, I think people often tend to use like way too much medium, and it can affect things like varnishing. Use as little medium as possible. I find people like scooping into the liquid or like dumping like loads of linseed oil into their paint, when in actuality you just need like the tiniest little bit. I will just like dip the tip of my paintbrush in to just like kind of smooth out the paint a bit, and that's all you need. Yeah, and then for cleaning, I just use Murphy's oil soap to clean my brushes, and it is toxic free, and I actually find that it cleans better than a lot of thinners. And I'll probably do an in-depth tutorial in the future on how I clean my brushes, so keep an eye out for that. But yeah, only time I ever use solvents is for the underpainting here, and you don't even have to use them for the underpainting. You can do an acrylic underpainting or something like that. So for our next question, we have, what textures do you find most challenging to paint, and what do you enjoy painting the most? So I think the textures that I find the most challenging to paint probably be grass. And I actually do have a full grass tutorial and how I paint grass, but a lot of times I feel like I kind of like don't enjoy painting grass, and I get really lazy with it. And I just have to remind myself to like take my time with grass, because yeah, it can be a bit boring from time to time. And I think my favorite textures to paint would be rock. Anything rock. Rocks on the ground, mountains, things like that. I love painting that. Even stone, like if it's a building or if it's architecture and there's brick, I love painting brick. It's so much fun. And I'll probably make a future in-depth tutorial on painting rock, so also keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's probably my favorite thing to paint. Next on the list is, please share tips on productivity, discipline, and routine. Which this question makes me laugh, because anyone who knows me knows that my schedule is wacky. Really, really wacky. So right now I paint full-time. This is my full-time thing, but a while ago I used to have a full-time job, and it was an artistic job, and it was very, very flexible, but I literally would paint in the middle of the night. So I would paint until like 4 or 5 in the morning. And thankfully my full-time job was flexible, and I could work a little bit later in the day so that I could sleep in. But even now that I'm painting full-time, I definitely tend to start late and work late. And that's just how I am. I'm a night owl, and I'm very, very productive like later in the day. And I'm just like a total potato in the mornings. Like I'm useless in the mornings. So I'm a huge advocate for working when it is best suited for you, whatever kind of your unique individual personality is like. And I totally understand that this is not feasible for many people, but if you work for yourself and you have this flexibility, or if you work for a company that allows flexible working, if you're an early bird, work early. And if you're a night owl like me, work late. So I typically work from like 11, I would say, until, and I take a break. So like my husband will get home, we'll have dinner together around like 6 or 7. But a lot of times I'm like right back to work after that. And sometimes I'm working until like 10, 11, 12, like late into the night. And that's just, like I said, that's very productive time for me. I find that a lot of times people who work late and sleep in get a bad rap for being lazy, when in actuality, like early birds will go to bed really early, and for the next, 5 hours after that, like I would be working. So like I said, huge advocate for working when it's best for you, if that is possible. But yeah, I think that's just kind of unique to you as an individual, if it's possible. And the only other thing that I would say on productivity, that's not schedule related, is hide your phone. Hide your phone from you. When I'm painting, if I have like my phone in my lap or in my chair or right next to me, a lot of times, like, I feel like every 15 minutes I'm like, scrolling through social media, or I'll get on my phone. When the best thing for me is to kind of play something, whether it's like a podcast or music, something that I don't have to like continuously change and like mess with my phone a lot, but put something on to where I don't need my phone, and like put it in the back of the room where I'm not gonna think about it, I'm not gonna see it. And yeah, I tend to paint for much longer periods of time, just much more productive time. Yeah, get the phone out of the way. We have approached the very last question of the day, which is there a subject matter that you would love to paint, but you don't think the audience will enjoy? And yes, I actually think there is something that falls under this category. Sometimes I'm always like really interested in what people are into, and I will put out on my story like 3 or 4 different photos, like all very, very, very different vibes. And I'll put out a poll, and it's just like, which one of these photos do you connect with the most? And all the time I will add in a photo, and I don't know if it's called Southern Gothic, this kind of style, but it almost looks like an abandoned building, or like an abandoned house, or an abandoned barn, like out in a field that's like really foggy and maybe has like some spooky trees. And I love that. I love that kind of look, that aesthetic, if you will. Anything spooky I love, and it is always like by far the least voted thing. I think people just tend to like the happier stuff. So yeah, I would love to do, I don't think I've really done a painting like that ever, but I would love to do something like that. But yeah, people tend to like happier things, I think. All right, and that is about it. I almost completely forgot to record an outro. But thank you so much to everyone who sent me questions to answer. I'll definitely be doing more Q&A videos in the future, so keep an eye out for prompts. We can do like personal Q&A or art Q&A. We can do whatever. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoyed it.